This episode is sponsored by Hired.com. Every week on Hired, they run an auction where over 1,000 tech companies in San Francisco, New York, and LA bid on JavaScript developers, providing them with the salary and equity up front. The average JavaScript developer gets an average of 5 to 15 introductory offers and an average salary of over $130,000 a year. Users can either accept an offer and go right into interviewing with the company or deny them without any continuing obligations. It's totally free for users, and when you're hired, they also give you a $2,000 signing bonus as a thank you for using them. But if you use the Adventures in Angular link, you'll get a $4,000 bonus instead. Finally, if you're not looking for a job but know someone who is, you can refer them to Hired and get a $1,337 bonus if they accept a job. Go sign up at hired.com/adventures in Angular. Ready to master Angular? Oasis Digital offers Angular Bootcamp, a 3-day in-person workshop class for individuals or teams. Bring us to your site or send developers to our classes in St. Louis or San Francisco, angularbootcamp.com. This episode is sponsored by Widmo5, a brand new generation of JavaScript controls. A pretty amazing line of HTML5 and JavaScript products for enterprise application development in that Widmo5 leverages ECMAScript 5 and each control ships with AngularJS directives. Check out the faster, lighter, and more mobile Widmo 5. This episode is sponsored by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is the provider I use to host all of my creations. All the shows are hosted there, along with any other projects I come up with. Their user interface is simple and easy to use, their support is excellent, and their VPSs are backed on solid-state drives and are fast and responsive. Check them out at DigitalOcean.com. If you use the code AngularAdventures, you'll get a $10 credit. Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 59 of the Adventures in Angular show. This week on our panel we have Lucas Rubelke.
Hello.
Ward Bell.
Hello there.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv. Just reminding you, probably for the last time, go check out AngularRemoteConf.com. I also have a quick announcement from Joe, and that is that the ngconf tickets, because they sold out so quickly last time, they're doing a lottery. So if you want tickets to ngconf, you can go enter the lottery. The lottery is free. The tickets are not. And then they are just going to randomly draw people and let them know that they can purchase tickets. And then they'll probably do another lottery because not everybody who they offer the opportunity to buy a ticket will buy a ticket, and they'll probably do that once or twice. So go over to ngconf.com. I think it's ngconf.com, and check it out and get your name on the list so that you can get tickets to the conference. It's next year, May 4th through 6th in Salt Lake City. It's my hometown. I may try and just walk in if I don't get a ticket, but we'll see how that goes.
That worked last year for you.
Yeah, last year I finagled a free ticket. I think it was free. I don't remember. I might have paid for it. Anyway, I finagled the ticket and I got to go. So ngconf.org is where it's at.
Actually, not quite. It's ng-conf.org.
Oh, ng-conf.org. Okay, thank you for that.
As I just found out.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and do a show. We haven't done this topic since we started the show, so I thought maybe we could revisit it and talk about what's out there now. But a lot of people seem to be asking me these days, what resources are there out there for learning how to do Angular? And I also get asked this question for Angular 2, and there are a few of those out there too. So I figured we could just talk about that and see where you gentlemen and where I am going to learn about Angular. Do either of you have a favorite resource that you go to get training on Angular?
So caveat to that is I am an egghead.io author, so just full disclosure, but I did do a free series on AngularJS fundamentals where I just walked through some very basic things in regards to an Angular app. And so generally when somebody asks me like, well, how do I ramp up on Angular? That's the first place that I send them. So it's 9 lessons, totally free, totally approachable. And it's just kind of a really good way to see some of the kind of fundamental concepts of, like, for instance, how do I even bootstrap Angular within an application and kind of go from there and just kind of cut your teeth on something, but actually build something semi-non-trivial. So for me, that's kind of my go-to place to start is the free Angular Fundamentals series on Egghead.
Yeah, they've also got a whole bunch of other ones on here. I'm looking at it real quickly, and I'm seeing AngularJS authentication with JWT. I'm seeing protractor testing, data modeling. They've also got stuff on Ionic. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff here. Gulp, application architecture, Webpack. So, I mean, if you're looking for Angular stuff and you're willing to drop some dough on it, this is a good place to go. And they do actually have a couple of free videos that I'm seeing here too.
Yeah, full disclosure, I'm a Pluralsight author, and I'm going to talk about Pluralsight in a second, but I also want to say that Egghead.io delivers wonderful content in a very different style than Pluralsight. And both the free and the paid content from Egghead.io are great. That said, I would also say that Joe and I and you, Chuck, you're a Pluralsight author, aren't you?
There's some debate on that, but yeah, go ahead.
There's some debate about that, right? and John Papa, your our other fellow panelists.
As am I.
And you're also a Pluralsight author
by way of Front-End Masters. So
hey. Well, anyway, so there are a lot of us who have content on Pluralsight. Now, that's also a subscription service, well worth the money. You can get free trials to check it out and cover a wide variety of content. But if I was to sort of point out a difference, I would say the Pluralsight stuff tends to be more long form. The courses are a minimum of 2 hours, whereas Egghead.io has these wonderful little learn something useful in 5 to 10 minute kind of things.
Yeah, and just to point out, I mean, both of these are video content, so you actually get in and get to watch them. So you watch somebody code, or you watch, they do slides and then code. So you get the concepts and then you get the explanations and the demonstrations. And that's kind of the best way for me to learn if I'm doing video is to see somebody actually type it in, and then I pause it and I go type it in. And yeah, they're terrific videos. I know that Code School also has an Angular course. So if you like kind of here's a little bit of a story and you're going to kind of build this stuff out, they've kind of mastered that too. And that's all video as well.
And another good resource is actually our buddy Dan Laline did a video a while back, and it's basically AngularJS fundamentals in 60-ish minutes, which a lot of people have used that to ramp up as well. It's a really good video.
If you got a little jingle in your pocket or you're going to a conference, there are also good choices there, like Dev Intersections. There's one conference in Las Vegas. There's a session, actually, there's a conference this fall. I'll be there. Dan will be there. John will be there. And there are workshops, which, by the way, if you get the workshop, then you get a gift. It almost pays for the ticket. And
which conference
lots
is this?
Of good content. This is Dev Intersections.
Dev Intersections.
And there you can meet and greet other people who are in the same bewildered state that you are and share your experiences. I'm kidding. Not everybody's bewildered. So then once you've got a little bit of chops under you, for me, one of the great resources is Stack Overflow combined with Plunker, Plunker. Plunker is one of those places where you can code, see code running, tweak it, see it run again, break it, all that good stuff. And it's tagged, so the Angular tags are pretty revealing, and many people who provide answers to questions in Stack Overflow have links to example codes running in Plunker. Highly recommended.
Yep. I'm also, since you brought up conferences, I'm just going to plug it here. If you want to attend Angular Remote Conf, I mean, this is just an online conference I'm putting on. I know that a lot of people have trouble getting out to conferences because the travel's expensive. The tickets are usually pretty expensive. And so I thought, okay, well, what's an option that people can go for? And so, I've got Brad Green and several other folks coming out to speak. Lucas is speaking at Angular Remote Conf. And so you can kind of get some expert content for an hour at a time from these different folks. And I'm actually going to be posting the schedule up this week. So you'll be able to see who the other speakers are. Yeah,
I think that's going to be great, Chuck. I only wish I'd been able to dedicate some time to that this time around, but I know it'll be a success, and I look forward to participating next time.
Yep. And I know that Angular Connect is coming up in England. So, I mean, that's another option. If you're in Europe, there's a good option there.
Now, I don't know how many kind of business listeners we have out there, but they often have a training budget, and many of us offer on-site training that's really focused on getting you ramped up for the kind of application you're actually trying to build. But one of the challenges, of course, with sort of going with this open education stuff is that it's all great and it's all sort of oriented to what people do in general. But if you're on a deadline and you have something to build, there's nothing like having somebody visit you on site and take you through in the context of the application that you actually have to build in a certain amount of time. I know this sounds like self-promotion, but it's important to know that these are options, and we're not the only people that do it. And when I say we, I mean your panelists here. Many of us have our own way of doing that. But it's a pretty effective way. It turns out to be cost-effective, although it doesn't seem that way initially, because most people like to wander in the woods forever. But when you're on a deadline, we can help.
Yeah, and just to pile onto that a little bit is that most of the content that we've talked about with Pluralsight or with Pluralsight, Egghead.io, Code School, a lot of the content that they have there, I would dare say probably at least 75% of the content there is geared toward people who are new or newish to Angular. And then the rest of it is generic, but, targets people who are doing it and trying to solve specific problems. And so if you want somebody to come in, look at what you're doing, and then give kind of an expert eye and expert take on what you're doing, that's where the live training really shines. I also know that the sponsor of the show, Oasis Digital, does on-site training. So you can check them out as well. Put a link to them in the show notes.
Right, we should do that. And one other point just to pile on as well is often you're trying to build your Angular application in the context of some kind of back-end service and a variety of other technologies. And generally, these course materials are narrowly focused on how to build that Angular front end when your application sort of covers a wide range of technologies that have to integrate. And again, that's so custom that you really can benefit from finding somebody who knows the front-to-back technologies that you happen to be using.
Yeah, in fact, do both of you want to just briefly talk about what backends you use?
I really like Firebase quite a bit. It's really good for proof of concepts as well as real-time stuff, and there's some pretty good use cases around that. I also really like Node, just because I'm a JavaScript developer, but I've worked with Rails, I've worked with Python, pretty much anything as long as it's a REST API. I'm happy to consume it, but as well as I'm fairly comfortable jumping in on the back end. But I generally will go with Node or Firebase, given my preference.
And when I speak of me, I also mean my company, AiA Blade. We've been pretty much in the enterprise space for a very long time, and we deal with, I guess, what many of our audience would think of as legacy, although it seems pretty alive to me, such as the traditional .NET backends, so .NET Web API, Entity Framework, SQL Server, or Java backends. We have expertise in that as well. And we also do Node Mongo. But I would say that most of our customers tend to be, they have existing services at the back end, even WCF type SOAP services, and they can't chuck those overboard. So it's like, how do I build a front end that's also playing with my existing commitments, including my existing front end commitments like ASP.NET? You have some sort of MVC app and you want to make some part of it richer, and you can't obviously completely change your gigantic MVC app all at once, but there are ways to sort of integrate the single page applications with an Angular front end into an existing MVC monster and gradually move over the pieces that you want without your user detecting it. So these are the kinds of problems we're comfortable tackling, and you're not going to learn about that stuff very easily by going to one of the generic courses. So again, when it comes to integration with existing systems, you're wise to look around and see who's out there who can help you.
Yeah, and I'm pretty heavily focused around Ruby. So it's going to be Ruby on Rails, Sinatra, Rhoda, which are all Ruby frameworks for building web applications and APIs. And I actually have a video series on Ruby on Rails called Rails Clips. And right now I am focusing on how you build APIs with Rails. So if you want to go check that out to just get some ideas on how you can put your APIs together so that they work nicely with your Angular app, then, go check that out. Because I'm probably going to do a little bit of integration video there too and just say, look, here's how you set things up for Angular, Ember, Backbone, or whatever, or iOS.
Sweet. So this has been the self-promotion show, it almost feels like.
A little bit.
Honestly, folks, it's good stuff.
Yeah, well, and if the resource you need is egghead.io, great. And if the resource you need is Lucas because he knows the answer to your question, then hire him. And the same for Ward or Joe or John or whoever.
I know we've kind of pointed towards like Pluralsight and Egghead and these different things, but I'm actually really impressed with just how much, free content is out there from, for instance, let's say, John Papa. I'm looking at his style guide on GitHub, and it's a phenomenal resource. And I can say even for myself, if you go to my blog, 100mind.com, there's just a ton of resources that I've put out there. So what's interesting is there's really a spectrum between, kind of us who are in this content space of like, yes, you can hire us to come on site, but as well as we are putting out a large body of just free content because we're passionate about the technologies and we love to learn. So it's really kind of from here's all this great free content to we can come on site as well. But, I know John has put out a ton of content. Ward has put out a ton of great content. Even Dan and Joe and different ones so it really runs the gamut from, completely free to completely specialized.
Yeah. One of my favorite resources for this kind of content is actually the NG newsletter. ng-newsletter.com. They actually send an email out. I don't remember if it's daily or weekly. I just look at it and browse through it and go, that's cool. And I click on it. But it's a terrific resource for a curated list of blog posts, videos, etc. that you can actually then go and use to level up your Angular stuff.
Yep.
That's Lucas's point is this stuff's free. The newsletter's free. And in this case, you get told where some of the newish stuff is that you should care about. Related to that, actually, the folks that put that together also have ng-book, and that's one of the first resources I went to when I wanted to learn Angular. They're actually putting out an ng book for Angular 2, and you can get the chapters as they write them and update them by checking that out. Maybe we can talk about Angular 2 resources here in a minute.
And I would say NG Book is by far the largest single body of content around Angular. I have a copy in my office, and it's like 800 pages or something. I killed a bear with it in the woods actually last week.
And that was with the blunt end of it.
It really is gigantic. So I don't keep the hard, and he's updating it regularly. Who is the author again? It's escaping me suddenly.
AiA Learner. Jinx.
Ari, that's right. Sorry, Ari. Yeah, and he's always updating it. And so, yeah, that's a wonderful resource. Now, I don't know how many of our listeners are coming to Angular absolutely cold, but often, even if they aren't, they're wondering, they know somebody who would be coming to it cold. And so if you were coming to it completely cold, what would be the steps you'd take?
The thing that I do when I'm learning a new framework or a new language or something like that is I like to go in and actually build an actual app. And so I'll actually go to like angularjs.org. They have kind of a little tutorial there to build like a quick to-do MVC. And so by the time you're done, I mean, it's a pretty dumb little app, but it works. And so at the end, you have something that you can tweak and play with and twist around and things like that. So, I mean, that's one place that I would go. I would also be asking around for other folks who have repositories or tutorials that I can run through that will actually have me building an app. For people who are brand new programmers, I think that's a different story altogether, and you may want to go with the egghead.io or Code School route. And their first Angular course is free. But, just find one of those and just work through it to kind of familiarize yourself with things before you get into the okay, I'm an experienced or semi-experienced coder, and I kind of get the basics here, so I'm just going to work through the rest of the stuff that they're handing me.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about somebody who doesn't have any programming experience. I think I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure Angular's the right way to go yet.
I don't know that's where I'd learn programming, which is not a criticism of Angular, but it kind of presupposes a certain degree of skill and experience in programming in general. And I want to reemphasize that I think every Egghead IO thing I've seen has really presupposed that you were an experienced developer. Probably, I usually presupposes that you know JavaScript to some degree. Yeah. And I think you'd be lost in many of the resources we've discussed if you lacked programming experience or lacked even a minimal JavaScript experience.
Yeah. So assuming that they have a basic level of programming experience and they probably know JavaScript, then yeah, that's what I would do. I would just find a couple of good tutorials and just work through them.
So one situation I run into a lot is actually working with designers and where you have that handoff where they give you basically, this layout that they've built in HTML and then you start to hook it up. But in an effort to kind of include them into the process, I gave a talk at NG Vegas called Turn Your Designers into Death Stars with Angular, which then turned into a post, which you can find on my blog, onehungermind.com. And it's just enough Angular for designers. And it is the absolute gentlest introduction to Angular that I could conceive. But I really believe, especially coming from maybe a design side or you don't have really strong JavaScript skills, that you can actually learn just a handful of concepts and start to be productive in Angular. And so we'll have that link in the show notes. But I found that to be the feedback I've gotten on that is really helpful. And it's really easy for people to grasp through a series of simple exercises that I've created in Plunker, actually.
That actually reminds me of part of the conversation we had with Aishigul a week or so ago where we were talking about D3, and she mentioned that basically, they just build directives that designers can drop in. So it's graph chart with this data. And so the programming chops really don't have to be strong. They just have to have enough understanding to understand that they're adding a data source and, a chart type, and then maybe a little bit of styling to it. And it seems like that's pretty approachable for people who are familiar with HTML, but may not have a strong understanding of JavaScript.
Hey, Lucas, what was that school, that intense boot camp type school that Scott Moss went to? There are a number of those in different cities, aren't there?
Hack Reactor is where he's from, and that is a really, really great, albeit super disruptive in terms of your life, place to actually go and learn how to program.
Yeah, they're turning out a lot of people who are getting scooped up by companies because they seem to turn out people who are ready to contribute.
Yep,
yeah,
that is correct.
A level down from that is Angular Bootcamp, and I mentioned Oasis Digital before for on-site training. This is their San Francisco, St. Louis. Looks like they've got a couple of others where they just do it. It's a 3-day course where you can kind of pick it up. So that's a little bit short of the 3-month boot camp.
Yeah, I think Joe's daughter, Katya, is going through a boot camp. So it's great for teenagers, too.
Yeah.
Keeps them off the street, You want to get them off drugs, throw them in. I'm not saying Katya's into drugs, but send them to boot camps.
You're going to get an angry call from Joe. Like, what'd you say about my daughter?
Joe's going to kill me. He's going to kill me, but that's not what I meant.
Yeah, but it sounded like she also got some stuff off of like Khan Academy and stuff when she was learning Angular, if I remember right from her talk. So there are a lot of resources out there. Are there resources that you guys are using to pick up Angular 2?
So I think, in my opinion, anyone's free to disagree with me, but I think if you really want to prepare yourself for Angular 2, start learning ES6. So I've been going through the Exploring ES6 book by Alec Rauschmeyer and then trying to write Angular 1.x apps like in that style. And it's been a bit of a paradigm shift, but that's just a really excellent book that I recommend. But I think it's going to make things a lot easier going forward.
You know what? I think that's right, Lucas. I don't think as we'll see in a minute, I don't think it's quite ready to learn Angular 2 itself just yet. And we'll talk about that. But there are skills that you need to pick up in order to get there, and those that are available now. And ES6 is one of them, and TypeScript is another. I'd start learning TypeScript. There's a pen for learning it. And I'd also start mastering Visual Studio Code, which is one of my, and we can mention other IDEs, but it's my go-to tool right now for writing in TypeScript.
Yeah, and we should put a link to our episode on that in the show notes. I'll also put links to JavaScript Jabber episodes where we've talked about some of the stuff like Babel or TypeScript or some of these other things as well.
Yeah, learning the loaders. There's just sort of these surrounding technologies that you can learn that will help you when you're building an Angular 2 app, even if you can't learn, if you're not really quite ready to learn Angular 2 yet. I would add some of the build tools that are going to be part of that, Gulp, NPM, Node as a client-side tool host. These are skills that you can pick up now. They're not going to change on you. Whereas trying to learn Angular 2 directly at the moment is, I just don't think it's ready for that today.
So, having said that, though, I mean, I've been poking around Angular.io, and, I periodically try and do stuff with it, and, I hit varying levels of success with that. But I think it's worth fiddling with and looking at the release notes on the different versions that they're putting out there. I think things are going to stabilize a lot more when we get to, when they actually release to beta. I think the APIs will be more stable, and we're going to see a whole lot less fluctuation in that. But in the meantime, I mean, it's definitely worth at least seeing what they're saying, even if you're not actually trying to build applications in Angular 2.
If you really want to be bold and you want to start playing with it, I think one of the best resources, actually, is my friend Pascal Precht's blog posts on Angular 2. He's pretty accurate. He's doing his best to keep the things up, and it's a wonderful series. So we'll put that in the show notes.
+1.
Yep, definitely. The other thing is that a lot of conference talks, I've been talking to a lot of speakers, and the speakers have been focusing, at least some of them have been focusing on how do you do whatever with Angular 2. And so that's also for recent conference talks a good way to get a feel for and a feel around what is coming up, because they actually go in and suffer through the changing APIs and stuff so that they have a demonstrable application that they can show people in their conference talk. And they're usually showing their code and their APIs and stuff like that. So just to put that out there too. So, Angular U, I know there were a few talks about stuff in NG or in Angular 2. I know that a few talks from Angular Remote Conf are going to have that. I know some of the talks from Angular Connect are going to have those. So, just keep an eye out there, and you're probably going to get some of the latest stuff on those APIs. But yeah, I don't know that it's ready for prime time to go and build stuff in it yet.
Sorry, your other alternative, if you're really bold, try to read the code. No, don't even try and read the source code. Don't even try.
Isn't it written in TypeScript?
It is. It is written in TypeScript.
So I hear that makes it better. I haven't actually tried, so I don't know that for sure.
They haven't put the comments in it yet, and it's a little bit of chutes and ladders, and it's a challenge right now. I know it's going to get better, but it's not going to be ready for us at the time that you hear this broadcast for the first time. And I'm looking forward to our being able to give a very different story on a podcast soon.
Yep. One other type of resource for learning about Angular and learning Angular that we haven't discussed is podcasts. And if you're listening to this one, I'm also going to throw out there that you probably want to go check out some of the episodes of JavaScript Jabber. You also want to go check out Angular Air, which is done by Kent C. Dodds and a few other folks that I think are pretty awesome and that we've had on the show. So, you can go check those out as well. They're bringing different people on and having discussions with them. Are there other podcasts that you guys listen to?
I only listen to this podcast.
Your heart is pure. All right. Well, are there any other resources that you guys want to jump into before we get to picks?
I'm going to throw out one resource, and this is the first that anybody's going to hear about this, but I actually just released a site. It's AngularTestingQuickStart.com. And so what happened is I had written a bunch of Angular tests. I started writing tests, and I realized there was a lot of common patterns that once I understood them, it was a lot easier to write test. And so I just kind of put these down into kind of a long form post. Jeff Welpley helped me write some of this, and I wasn't for sure what I was going to do about it. So anyways, I open sourced it. It's on GitHub. I accept pull requests. But if you go to AngularTestingQuickStart.com, there's a lot of kind of patterns that I found to be helpful. The goal is that you'll just be one step closer to actually writing your first Angular test if you're stuck.
All right. One last thing, I also did a search in YouTube for Angular, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there too. There are demos in there, there are conference talks in there. Just another place to go check stuff out. All right, let's go ahead and do some picks. Ward, do you have some picks for us?
I guess my pick would have to be a tool that maybe everybody else knows, but it's new to me, and I've been using it pretty steadily for the last couple of weeks, and I like it, and that is Slack. slack.com. It's kind of an industrial strength chat mechanism product with searchable histories and sort of little channels and things like that. So it's kind of displaced my other means of organizing conversations around specific interest groups with a specific private audiences. And I like it. I gotta say, I like it. I don't know about if you guys are using it.
I am a huge fan of Slack. Love Slack.
Yep, me too.
How would you guys differentiate it from, say, well, we're on Skype at the moment, or any of the other channels that or vehicles for these kinds of conversations? How would you distinguish it?
So the integrations are phenomenal. The fact that you can integrate into like GitHub, Giphy, just about anything. Like the API is pretty open, and so it's really, really useful. For instance, even if you're talking to somebody and you want to hop into a Google Hangout, there's an easy integration. So in my case, whoever I'm talking to, I just do /hangout, and it just pops it right up and we're in a Hangout.
Yeah. The other thing is that it's kind of like IRC in the sense that you can create unlimited channels. You can also create private channels. All of these things are in the free level. Some of the integrations you have to have a paid account in order to use them. But at the free level, all of that works. You can invite people in. There are also applications out there that will use Slack's APIs to send people invitations. So they click a button, they fill in their email address, and then it sends them an invitation to your Slack team. It doesn't do video, but like Lucas said, you can use the Hangouts. The other thing that I really love about it is that, your history is completely searchable. And in Skype, your history is searchable until you so I have a few applications that clear stuff off of my Mac. And one of the things that it cleans up is the chat history for Skype. And so once that gets cleaned up, it's gone. And that's the only place it's stored except for on the other people who are also in your chat. So, when everybody cleans that up, it gets gone. And the other thing is that there are so many things you can do with it. It also has the IRC integration. So if you want to pull in bots, there are a gazillion different implementations of IRC bots. And so you can pull those into Slack as well. So lots and lots and lots of capabilities that you get basically for free. Any other picks before we ask Lucas Ward?
No, that's what I have for you.
All right. Lucas, what are your picks?
So my pick is a series that I just started on Audible. It is the Pillars of Reality series by Jack Campbell. I just finished the first book, The Dragons of Dorcastle. Really, really good book. It's kind of this interesting, kind of steampunk / magic kind of storyline that's pretty interesting. Jack Campbell is an excellent writer. I think everybody would enjoy it.
All right. So I'm going to pick a couple of things. I want to remind everybody, Angular Remote Conf coupon code ADVENTURE for 25% off. So go use that coupon code, take advantage of it. That gets you basically a $200 ticket for $150. That also works on the group tickets. So if you want to have your users group get together, you can find a company that'll sponsor it. That'll take it from $2,000 to $1,500 for a ticket. So that code's ADVENTURE. I also want to pick a book. I've been reading this book off and on for one of my mastermind groups, and it's called Essentialism by Craig McKeown. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, it is really good, and it's really helped me kind of boil things down to the essential few things that I need to be focused on. And I can't say enough good things about it. And it's funny because I've either listened to it or read it a couple of times, and every time I'm like, oh, okay, that's another thing that I need to do. And so I wind up doing that and cutting a whole bunch of more stuff and finding other things that I don't need to worry about. And it just makes things so much easier, better, nicer, makes my life better. So anyway, I'm just really digging the book. So I'm going to pick it, even if I've picked it in the past. And I don't think we have any other announcements. Just a reminder, do go to ng-conf.org and get in on that lottery if you think you might even, by some remote chance, be able to make it out to Salt Lake City at the beginning of May of next year. And we'll look forward to seeing you there. Hosting and bandwidth provided by the Blue Box Group. Check them out at bluebox.net. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more. Do you want to have conversations with the Adventures in Angular crew and their guests? Do you want to support the show? Now you can. Go to adventuresinangular.com/forum and sign up today.